In the spring of 1943, the Eastern Front was suspended in a volatile equilibrium. Following the recapture of Kharkov, a massive salient emerged around the strategic hub of Kursk, bulging 100 miles into the German lines. Chief of the Army Staff, Kurt Zeitzler, proposed Operation Citadel, a double pincer offensive designed to pinch off the salient and trap massive Soviet field armies. However, the plan faced immediate opposition from Germany's sharpest commanders. General Walter Model presented detailed aerial reconnaissance showing that the Soviets had anticipated the attack, constructing deep, multi-layered defensive belts of mines and anti-tank ditches. General Heinz Guderian pleaded with Hitler to cancel the operation entirely, warning that the newly designed Panther and Tiger tanks were plagued by severe mechanical defects and must be preserved to rebuild the depleted Panzer divisions. Yet Hitler remained paralyzed by indecision, repeatedly delaying the offensive to wait for more tanks. This hesitation proved fatal. Every week Hitler delayed. The Soviet Stavka under Marshal Zhukov poured millions of mines and thousands of guns into the bulge. When Hitler finally greenlit the attack, he was sending his panzers into the most formidable defensive network in military history. In late May 1943, a decisive conference at the Wolf's Lair altered the course of the war. Faced with Guderian's technical reports and Model's photographic evidence of Soviet fortifications, Hitler makes a rare decision. He cancels Operation Citadel entirely, transitioning to a strategic defensive posture. With the suicidal offensive abandoned, Germany's elite Panzer divisions are quietly withdrawn into deep reserve positions. Guderian's dream of rebuilding the Panzer arm is realized. Thousands of newly produced Panther and Tiger tanks, along with standardized Stu-G assault guns, are distributed to depleted units in a non-combat environment, allowing crews to undergo intensive training while mechanics fix critical transmission defects. This creates a formidable, fully rested strategic reserve of over 20 elite armored divisions, including the battle-hardened SS Panzer Corps. This pivot is accompanied by a return to Manstein's favored concept of the backhand blow elastic defense. Rather than holding every inch of ground under rigid no-retreat orders, the German armies prepare to use space to buy time. They construct flexible defensive belts, using small infantry strongpoints to delay and channel Soviet forces, while keeping the massive panzer reserves concentrated and mobile, ready to strike once the Red Army overextends across the Ukrainian plains. Inside the Kursk salient, the massive forces of the Red Army lay waiting in breathless anticipation. For months, the Stavka had planned to absorb the German armoured thrust at Kursk and then launch a crushing counteroffensive. However, as June and July of 1943 passed, the expected German onslaught never materialized. Sensing their strategic surprise was slipping and under intense pressure from Stalin, Marshal Georgy Zhukov is forced to make a difficult operational pivot. Realizing the Wehrmacht would not walk into their trap, the Soviets have no choice but to launch their massive summer offensives, Operation Kutuzov and Operation Rumyantsev, against a fully intact German army. When the Red Army surges forward on July 12th, they slam into a fully prepared, deeply echeloned German defensive system. General Walter Model implements his legendary defensive doctrine in the north, utilizing tactical shields, deeply buried machine gun nests and anti-tank strongpoints, while keeping his armor held back as a sword to slice into any breakthrough. In the south, Manstein executes a disciplined fighting retreat, drawing overextended Soviet tank corps into prepared kill zones. The Red Army's advanced guards become increasingly separated from their supplies, their flanks growing longer and more vulnerable by the mile. By late July 1943, the Soviet summer offensive had reached a critical tipping point. The overextended Soviet 5th Guards tank army had pushed 80 miles into German lines, creating a deep, vulnerable salient near Belgorod. Believing they were on the verge of a decisive breakthrough, Soviet commanders rushed their armored reserves forward, unaware they were driving straight into a massive, carefully prepared trap. On July 25th, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein finally unleashes his concentrated sword. The fully rested panzer divisions of the 4th Panzer Army and Army Detachment Kempf strike the overextended Soviet flanks with surgical precision. Led by the elite divisions of the SS Panzer Corps, equipped with mechanically sound Tiger and Panther tanks, the Germans exploit the open terrain. The panzer columns slice through the thin Soviet flank guards, rapidly advancing into the rear to secure vital bridges and junctions. Within 48 hours, the pincers snap shut, trapping multiple Soviet tank corps in a series of rapidly shrinking mobile cauldrons on the Ukrainian plains. Severed from their supply lines, the trapped Soviet forces are systematically pulverized. The summer of 1943 becomes a monumental Soviet defeat, with the Red Army losing over 500,000 men and thousands of tanks, violently wrenching the strategic initiative back to Germany. The stunning tactical success of the German summer counteroffensive in 1943 alters the strategic landscape, yet it cannot change the cold mathematics of a global war of attrition. By cancelling Operation Citadel and preserving their armoured reserves, the Wehrmacht stabilises the Eastern Front for the remainder of 1943. They easily defeat Soviet attempts to force the Dnieper River, locking the East into a stabilised winter stalemate. This stability allows the High Command to transfer elite Panzer divisions to other critical fronts. In Italy, these fully rested formations halt the Allied landings at Salerno and Anzio, forcing a grueling static war in the mountains. In France, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel receives vital armoured reinforcements to fortify the Atlantic Wall before D-Day. However, despite these victories, Germany remains trapped in a war of exhaustion it is destined to lose. The Kursk cancellation did not halt Soviet industrial production, which continued to churn out thousands of T-34 tanks and aircraft from factories behind the Urals. Backed by a relentless torrent of Allied Lend-Lease, the Red Army remains highly lethal. By avoiding the self-inflicted wound of Kursk, Germany bought itself time. But against the combined industrial colossi of the Allies, time was a luxury that only served to delay their inevitable defeat.